Here we go. Space accidents means that tardigrades may have contaminated our moon. Just over 5 years ago, on 22nd of February 2019, an unmanned space probe was placed in orbit around the moon, named Bereshit and built by SpaceX and Israel Aerospace Industries. It was intended to be the first private spacecraft to perform a soft landing. Among the probe's payload were tardigrades, renowned for their ability to survive in even the hardest climates. The mission ran into trouble from the start with a failure of star tracker cameras intended to determine the spacecraft's orientation and thus properly control its motors. Budgetary limitations had imposed a pared-down design, and while the command center was able to work around some problems, things got even trickier on April 11th, the day of the landing. On the way to the moon, the spacecraft had been traveling at high speed and it needed to be slowed down to make a soft landing. Unfortunately, during the braking maneuver, a gyroscope failed, blocking the primary engine. At an altitude of 150 meters, Bereshit was still moving at 500 kilometers an hour, far too fast to be stopped in time, and the impact was violent. The probe shattered and its remains were scattered over a distance of around 100 meters, that's about 300 feet. We know this because the site was photographed by NASA's LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter satellite, on April 22nd. Animals that can withstand almost anything, these tardigrades. So what happened to the tardigrades that were traveling on the probe? Given their remarkable abilities to survive situations that would kill pretty much any other animal, could they have contaminated the moon? Worse, might they be able to reproduce and colonize our moon? Tardigrades are microscopic animals that measure less than a millimeter in length, all have neurons, a mouth opening at the end of retractable proboscis, an intestine containing a microbiota of 4 pairs of non-articular legs, ending in claws, as we can see here. Isn't that beautiful? So, and most have 2 eyes. As small as they are, they share a common ancestor with arthropods such as insects and arachnids, the spiders. Most tardigrades live in aquatic environments, but they can be found in any environment, even urban ones. Emmanuel Delagout, a researcher at the CNRS, collects them in the mosses and lichens of the Jardin des Plantes in Paris. To be active, feed on microalgae such as chlorella and move, grow, and reproduce, tardigrades need to be surrounded by a film of water. They reproduce sexually or asexually via parthenogenesis from an unfertilized egg, or even hermaphroditism, when an individual which possesses both male and female gametes self-fertilizes. Once the egg has hatched, an active life of the tardigrade lasts from 3 to 30 months. A total of 1,265 species have been described, including 2 fossils. Tardigrades are famous for their resistance to conditions that exist neither on Earth nor on the moon. They can shut down their metabolism by losing up to 95% of their body water. Some species synthesize a sugar called trehalose, and it acts as an antifreeze, while others synthesize proteins that are thought to incorporate cellular constituents into an amorphous glassy network that offers resistance and protection to each cell. During dehydration, the tardigrade's body can shrink to half its normal size. The legs disappear with only the claws still visible. The state, known as cryptobiosis, persists until conditions for active life become favorable again. Depending on the species of tardigrade, individuals need more or less time to dehydrate, and not all specimens of the same species manage to return to active life. Dehydrated adults survive for a few minutes at temperatures as low as minus 272 degrees Celsius or as high as 150 degrees Celsius, that's a low oven, and over the long term at high doses of gamma rays of 1,000 or 4,400 gray, GY. By way of comparison, a dose of 10 GY is fatal for humans, and 40 to 50,000 GY sterilizes all types of material. However, whatever the dose, radiation kills tardigrade eggs, and what's more, the protection afforded by cryptobiosis is not always clear-cut, as is the case for Milnesium tardigradium, where radiation affects both active and dehydrated animals in the same way. So what about the lunar life? What happens to the tardigrades after they crashed on the moon? Are any of them still valuable, buried under the moon's regolith, the dust that varies in depth from a few meters to several dozen meters? First of all, they have to have survived the impact. Laboratory tests have shown that frozen specimens of Hypsibius dujardini species traveling at 3,000 kilometers an hour in a vacuum were fatally damaged when they smashed into sand. However, they survived impacts of 2,600 kilometers an hour or less, and their hard landing on the moon, unwanted or not, was far slower than that. The moon's surface is not protected from solar particles and cosmic rays, particularly gamma rays, but here too the tardigrade would be able to resist. In fact, Robert Wimmer Schwingruber, professor at University of Kiel in Germany, and his team have shown that the doses of gamma rays hitting the lunar surface were permanent but low compared to the doses mentioned above. In 10 years, exposure to lunar gamma rays would correspond to a total dose of around 1 GY. But then there's a question of life on the moon. The tardigrade would have to withstand a lack of water, as well as temperature ranging from minus 170 to 190 degrees Celsius during the lunar night, and 100 to 120 degrees Celsius during the day. A lunar day or night lasts a long time, just under 15 Earth days. The probe itself was not designed to withstand such extremes, and even if it hadn't crashed, it would have ceased all activity after just a few Earth days. Unfortunately for the tardigrades, they can't overcome the lack of liquid water, oxygen, and microalgae. They would never be able to reactivate, much less reproduce. Their colonizing the moon is thus impossible. Still, the inactive specimens are on the lunar soil, and their presence raises ethical questions, as Matthew Silk, an ecologist of the University of Edinburgh, points out. Moreover, at a time when space exploration is taking off in all directions, contaminating other planets could mean that we would lose the opportunity to detect extraterrestrial life. The author thanks Emmanuel Delagout and Cedric Hubes of the Museum of Paris and Robert Wimmer Schwingruber, University of Kiel, for their critical reading of the text. And this was by Laurent Pilka, Museum of Natural History. The articles were published from Conversation under Creative Commons, and this is on Science Alert. So, when another craft gets there and perhaps gets samples of the soils from there, will they see tardigrades living there? That's the question. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.